Savvy Central Radio, drawing out the best from our guests, with host Christina Nichman.
Savvy Central Radio is proud to present a live interactive series featuring a new mix to business networking and interviews. Our second event will take place on May 23rd at Tornassau Wellness in Manhattan with our guest, Rochelle Khanna, licensed clinical social worker. She'll share with us her new book, 30 Days of Prayer, Healing Autoimmunity for Women. This event is for health professionals, fitness experts, alternative care professionals, and anyone looking to create optimum wellness in their life. To find out more, book your free ticket today at bit.ly.com/savvyevent, 2. That is bit.ly.com/savvyevent, 2. Hello everyone, and welcome to Savvy Central Radio. This is your host, Christina Nichman. Each week on Savvy, we host successful individuals and business owners, inviting them to share their dreams, stories, wisdom, and lessons learned in their field of business. Our guest today is Julia Roberts, a certified creativity and life coach, innovation facilitator, author, and speaker. Julia has been a marketing strategist for over 20 years and a practitioner of CPS, creative problem solving. Today, Julia shares details into her new book, Sex, Lies, and Creativity, Improve Innovation Skills and Enhance Innovation Culture by Understanding Gender Diversity and Creative Thinking. Using a scientific and researched approach, the book crystallizes the innate differences between men and women and what impact the gender variations might have on how we create alone and in groups. To find out more about Julia and her new book, visit decodingcreativity.com. Hi, Julia. Welcome to Savvy Central Radio. How are you?
Great, Christina. Thank you very much for having me.
Aw, you're welcome. Well, I'm excited because I was very intrigued. I think I emailed you because I found your book on Facebook. You had mentioned that your new book had come out, Sex, Lies, and Creativity. And with that title, I had to give you a call and find out what that's all about.
Yeah, that's a promising title, but it's not a salacious book, let me assure you.
Well, the incomplete title is Sex, Lies, and Creativity, Improve Innovation Skills and Enhance Innovation Culture by Understanding Gender Diversity and Creative Thinking. You know, you have a very detailed research background. You are a coach. Tell us how you came about penning your new book, Sex, Lies, and Creativity.
So there is a 60-year-old scientific field of studies called creative studies. It's a branch of psychology, and it was kind of launched in 1950 when the head of the APA stood up and said, what are we doing to encourage creativity in this country? Why aren't we, I think it was right after Sputnik or right before Sputnik when we kind of got crazy that maybe we were losing the creativity race around the world. So this branch of psychology began in great earnest. I mean, really great urgency. This is what I have my master's in creative studies. So, but because it was the 1950s, 1960s, very little attention has been paid to either how women create or if there's a difference. They really looked at men over and over and over again. That's not surprising, and that's not even horrible. It's just how the world was at the time. With the exception of a few really great scientists, a couple come to mind for me, Dr. Sandra Bem in the 70s, who looked at the role of psychological androgyny and its impact on creativity in both men and women. And Ravenna Helson was one of the pioneers of the Mill study, and she looked at how girls play and how that predicts creativity. So there's a few people who really focused on women, and there were a number of women practitioners, but who were just in the regular thing of looking at creativity generally without looking at men and women separately. The one thing that happened over and over again is these tests, divergent tests they're called, which is how many ideas you can get in a minute on a certain subject. Yeah. So these tests of creativity, raw creativity, there was a pissing match of between men and women on that over and over and over again, which was a statistical dead heat. Men and women are equally creative, but there is not an equal creativity output in the world. So what causes that? I really kind of got tired of the glass ceiling and the feminist look at it, the social views.
Yeah.
And I just thought, you know what? Let's just go back to basics. Let's look at what really matters factually, the neurological differences, the biological differences, and the developmental differences. And then with our creative expertise, see how those things affect creativity. That's why I did it.
Yeah, I found it truly fascinating. There was a lot in there I didn't realize that how we are both creative, men and women, but create very differently and come from different perspectives. And also, I was really at one of your chapters early on, you talked about the lies we tell of ourselves that affect our creativity, both men and women. And I was surprised. I was like,
both men and women, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I was like, really? We tell lies? So explain that for our audience a little bit.
Well, even though I'm a really smart person and I'm a writer, I'm extremely verbal.
Yeah.
I've come to understand that my brain is a cheap lying bastard. It'll tell me anything to keep me from doing my work, from sitting down to write, from trying too hard, from sticking out, from standing out. A brain is really actively trying to get you to conform. Mm-hmm. So the lies we tell ourselves are, I'm not creative. So I've heard so many people say that with just pride. I don't have a creative bone in my body, they would say. I don't see where the value of that is, but it means I'm conforming. I'm a behaving person, right? I behave well. The other thing we hear is I'm not good enough, because look at what she creates. Man, it's way better, Yeah. The one we hear over and over again is I'm too old. Yeah, also, just what's the point? They'll never listen to me. They'll never change. Here's a biggie, though, that companies have. I think 2 out of 3 companies have the word innovation in their mission statement.
Yep.
And so the lie or the pretension is that innovation is a top priority. Whereas really, you don't want all your employees innovating. That's why you have a company with standards and policies. Yeah. You want some people innovating, but you really want to make sure everybody else is just toeing the line so that the things get shipped, so that the things get out, so that things get made, Yeah. So that's a couple. I mean, that's many. Those are all, I think I base this on 9 or 10 lies in the very beginning of the book, and then look at the research that debunks those lies.
Yeah, it was fascinating. And it reminds me of both my parents were artists, actually. My dad was a pastry chef, like the Cake Boss. He would do cakes like that.
Great.
And totally said he was not an artist. I'm just a cake maker.
Yeah.
I think it's some of the myths that our culture puts out there as well. Does that play a part in people's creativity or lack thereof, what culture tells us?
Well, I also think it helps people live with a creative job that may or may not be their creative calling. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean to cast asparagus on your parents there, but at all. Because they both lived creative lives, but maybe your dad wanted to be more of a chef or something. And so to say I'm not an artist kind of means I'm okay where I am and I'm not going to put my foot into the ring. It's their brain trying to make sure you conform within where you are. It's like, I'm not one of those people who's aching to be a best-selling novelist. I'm just a copywriter. Mm-hmm. Even though your cakes are brilliant, your copy's brilliant, and that is social to some degree, that we put out some things as artistry and other things as craftsmen, as if those aren't both really creative undertakings.
Mm. And so the whole premise actually then is that much in society kind of inhibits creativity to keep people in line, to keep people, kind of the same.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. To keep people, why else would we all show up 9 to 5 and take a salary for filling in columns of something or others?
Exactly.
We have, and even as we do these columns of something or others, in many, many kinds of jobs, whether they're Excel spreadsheets and numbers or tables with deadlines and, activities or all sorts of things. Even as we do those things, there's plenty of creativity in those jobs. Plenty, really. I think we undervalue the word creativity. Like, we only think it is people with big ideas in our culture. In fact, in Eastern cultures, they only think of it as people with artistry. The people with big ideas, they kind of think of as crazy people on the corner who are shouting out ideas. You know what I mean? So whereas we think of the people who are artistry, perfecters, doers, we think of them sort of as the doobies. So we think of the creative people as Steve Jobs and not Steve Wozniak, if I have those names right. I think his name's Steve.
Yeah.
But see what I'm saying? Like, the big idea guy is who we call creative, not the make it happen, make it great guy. And those are both really creative endeavors.
Yeah, and it's true on a daily basis. At any given time, we are creative. And as my friend said, she had 2 kids. They're toddlers. And to get them to go along with what she wants on a day-to-day basis, they don't have all of their language skills yet. So she has to find different ways to leverage, negotiate, and be creative to get them to do whatever.
Because force would work.
Yeah.
Force would work in the workplace too. But it's never it's never the creative option. It's never the one that creates growth or creates new opportunities or options.
And I would think over time that it would probably backfire on you as well.
In the workplace and with the toddlers, without a doubt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
And what are the key differences you found with your research between the way men and women create?
So, I mean, both in what environments bring out their best creativity. There's other matrices besides male female. There's introvert, extrovert. There's all sorts of different matrices that might cause people to respond well in some environments and not in others. For instance, the typical brainstorming where you're supposed to call out your ideas, those favor extroverts and to some degree men. So if you have some introverted brainstorming techniques, you're likely to pick up more of the creativity that you have on the table there. Or around the table. So, in fact, as recently as 1992, so that isn't, maybe it's a half a generation ago, but not a long, long time ago, Teresa Amabile, a researcher in gender and creativity for the Harvard Business Review, had a book that explained that the girls she was studying, not women, but girls, are adverse to praise for good work. They prefer praise for hard work. And boys are the opposite. Boys like, that's good, that's a great painting, not, I see you're working hard. They think that's a chump praise. Wow. Whereas girls actually prefer no praise, but if they have to stomach some praise, they prefer praise for working hard, not for outcomes. So you can see how that would affect creativity, right? Does that?
Yeah, most of.
So in 1953, Harvey Lehman wrote this book called Peak and Decline. And that was a study of when and how many things people created at what points in their lives. Mm-hmm. And it showed that, in your early 30s and 40s, you're the most creative, and then it starts to decline into your 60s and 70s and starts to be more reiterative. You're not changing the wheel. You're just tinkering with the wheel. And this book went into 7 or 8 printings. It was a huge influence on the corporate culture of the late 1950s. And it was a great contributor to the youth culture when you think of the Pepsi generation, et cetera, in the 60s. Mm-hmm. But it was entirely based on men's creativity. Mm-hmm. And women's creativity actually has a very different graph. So if men's creativity, and certain creativities are peak younger than others anyway. Probably like music peaks really young. Poetry and mathematics tend to peak young, meaning that you come to your best and most innovative work young. But women have a really huge resurgence of creativity early in their 50s. And corporate America is really poised to take advantage of men's 20s, 30s, 40s creativity and poised to dump them in their 50s, 60s, 70s. ever since the peak and decline theory, right? But nobody is out there going, where are these creative 50-year-old women who are just about to hit their biggest and most important work?
And that's probably why it's interesting. A lot of the people that end up coming on the show are people who had once been in corporate, a good many of them, who are now branching out and starting their own businesses. And I'm guessing a good portion of that has to do with this creativity that's coming about, because a lot of them did come about it for reasons of crisis in their life or whatever. But I think they realize this is the best way to get your creativity and your passions and your skills and gifts into the world. Yes, because nobody's paying attention to them. I mean, we still have a really hardwired preference for procreative humans. That's just like who's attractive to us in our country, and not just our country, but among humans. Yeah. So women who are postmenopausal, they have this enormous resurgence in testosterone. They lose progesterone completely, and what happens therefore is they basically have this creative resurgence. Most women are saying that they leave a job to spend time with their families. Sounds like a politician too, which is mostly men. I'm going to spend time with my family. But in essence, there's been a couple of studies that say, yes, that's what they say, but what's actually is that they just didn't feel relevant or appreciated or sought after as they reached their 50s and had so much to give. Right. So I think there's studies that show that women will say, I left the workplace to spend time with my family. That's what they say publicly, the same way most politicians will say that. Yeah. But in actuality, what they're leaving about is that there is nobody capitalizing on this resurgence of creativity. Many of them love their jobs and love their workplaces, but didn't feel like anybody was listening to them, and they had no leeway to create something new.
right when they were having this physiological resurgence, this increase in testosterone, the end of progesterone, just a natural resurgence of creativity in their 50s. It's un-American not to capitalize on that.
Wow.
I mean, that's what we do. We exploit people's strengths, but this one is just an unknown strength. So really, business is not up to snuff on exploiting that.
Yeah. And what's interesting is I think that goes to something else I've heard people mention, which is we have an over obsession with youth in our country, that youth equals best. You know, if you're young, it's good, you're viral, you're I don't know, a better worker. And for some reason, when you're older, you're less qualified or less worthy. And it's kind of nuts because that's when you're at your, not only your most creative, but you have all these years of experience and wisdom behind you.
Yeah, and that was extremely exacerbated by the incoming internet era and all the social media and things. There was a time in my career, and many of my peers sort of lost their jobs or lost a lot of their work to 20-year-olds, basically, because we didn't understand online marketing, basically. The buzzwords were social media and blogging and things like that. And we didn't even know what those things were yet. So we all lost our jobs. And then come to find out 3-4 years later, they needed someone around, you know. They brought back in some people. I was almost always freelance, so I didn't have the same impact. But in general, a lot of people got let go or downsized or put aside for these 20-year-olds because that was extremely exacerbated by the virtual world, until we all caught up and got good at it, and then we brought to bear our other experience. And yes, we are hiring 40-year-olds again.
Yeah, you had mentioned also the hormonal shifts with women.
Progesterone.
Progesterone is gone, and testosterone goes up. What are the hormonal changes for men? How does it affect men's creativity?
Throughout life, women have an 8-to-1 ratio of estrogen compared to men, and men have a 10-to-1 ratio of testosterone compared to women, typically. So estrogen's attributes, and I'll talk about progesterone in just a minute. That's the pregnancy preparing hormone. But estrogen's attributes really are like inclusiveness, collaboration, emphasis on community, the nurturing behaviors, simultaneous thinking using our left and right brain at the same time, having intuition, having many right ways, like keeping a flexible and conditional point of view about how to solve this problem. Testosterone will have, by contrast, exclusiveness, competition instead of collaboration, emphasis on hierarchy, who's in charge here, what are the rules, dominance behaviors, like that's what they think, is good and right. Sequential thinking, they use first their left brain and then their right brain. Logic instead of intuition, one right way, we just have to find the answer. It's not, there's a lot of ways to solve this, right? And they're sort of rigid and dogmatic. They like rules and structure. That's why the world is rigid and structured, because men created a lot of the world. So that sets it up to be. So when you think of the effects of those human behaviors on creativity, a little bit of feminine influence would enhance creativity all around. Whereas women do both of those at once, so they'll also put it out unedited, raw, still crying, because they're able to language it so quickly after feeling it.
Wow.
So both of those, we could easily disregard or disdain that behavior on either person's part. He can't even talk about his feelings, or she was blubbing in the office. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But from my point of view, those are both gender intelligences. We have a gender intelligence to bring to the workplace, and we can each benefit from the other's gender intelligence. I know myself that having worked in offices for so many years, that I am bettered for a little bit of the testosterone attribute influence. You know what I mean? I don't have greater testosterone as a result of having been in agencies and corporate settings all these years, but I have learned a lot of these behaviors. I can function better in those settings because of them, but it also benefits me. So you want to be able to collaborate with the opposite sex and appreciate the gender intelligence that each person walks into the room with.
I love that, Julia. That recalls for me also when people talk about their partners or husbands, why can't you understand me? I want you to talk about your feelings. And from understanding your book, it gets you to understand that he is not in a position where his perspective and his genetic understanding is not going to be able to get the problem the same way you are. But that's okay. And he has a perspective that's really valuable. It is. Absolutely.
You can blame him for not having your perspective, but that is useless.
Exactly. We get into fights because we want our men to think like us without realizing that they don't think like us. They think like a man, and that's fine. You can bring both of your perspectives together. And like, for instance, my partner is extremely practical, very kind of black and white. I'm kind of airy and like a big rainbow. And sometimes I'm like all over the place. But what's great is his perspective as being so grounded and practical reels me in and gets me thinking straight on certain topics.
Right. So
yeah,
that's what I'm saying. And by contrast, you can nudge him out of his rigidity sometimes, and he'll do something that would surprise him.
Mm-hmm. And vice versa, gets me to calm down and whoa, come down to earth now.
Just to finish up with the progesterone, which is, like I said, the hormone that prepares your body for pregnancy. Mm-hmm. And so when you're in your cyclical years, which is, for most women from about, I think its onset is about 12. Mm-hmm. 12 and a half. That's the average American onset. And menopause, is 51 and a half. So that's a lot of our years that we're in cyclical, we're in cyclical mode. In those times, then on a monthly cyclical basis, we'll have progesterone rise and testosterone drop at the same time. And the attributes of progesterone are sensitivity to emotional nuance. It can have a sedative effect where you're like actually sleepy or dopey feeling or foggy feeling. Mm-hmm. And here's the two that drive us all and our mates crazy too. Heightened need for approval and increased desire for affection. So this is when we might actually seem needy, especially in a workforce. Mm. Or feel needy and have shame about it because it doesn't fit in a workforce, in a workplace. So progesterone has like no place in the workplace almost. And yet it is still, in my opinion, very much a part of our gender intelligence. Our sensitivity to emotional nuance is extremely valuable, particularly in sales situations, in anything persuasive, in crime fighting, in any number of situations where sensitivity to emotional nuance is of value. The sedative effect, the truth of that is, it's just like any other effect that's negative. It helps you appreciate and take advantage of the other times in your life. And the heightened need for approval and affection, God knows workplaces have been able to maximize that need. It's a driver. Yeah. There's no two ways about it. It makes us eminently exploitable.
Yeah, I get you. It's great, though, what you're mentioning, though, about us being hyper-aware and sensitive to others around us, because it can help us also look at a problem and solve it from a very diplomatic position, because we're having more empathy for the different sides. So I think it can come in.
In actuality, when you're doing anything for a customer, mm-hmm. which is most businesses, it can also give you a very heightened sense of empathy with your customer, your client, or your user, your audience.
Absolutely.
So that can definitely play a very strong and important creative role there. So women have this cyclical thing. So that's, to some men, that's that would be considered moody, unpredictable, unpleasant in certain ways. And some women would buy into that and, would line right up with that and say, yes, that's how I feel too about that time of my life. Whereas, by the contrast, though, men's testosterone can rise as much as 400% in a day, in the event of some kind of confrontation. Mm. So they have this reputation of flying off the handle. Mm. And then let's say they win this confrontation. Then they're kind of gloaty because their testosterone soars even higher. Or they lose. Then their testosterone dips so precipitously that they're almost sick to their stomach. Although I've been told even lower. But, but in the end, then they seem like they're being a big baby.
Yeah.
So we can judge them, and we do as women. Or we can say, hey, that is their gender intelligence, and there's value in that. They try extremely hard because the consequences of losing, the physical consequences to them are really high.
Yeah.
That's why they're so competitive.
Yeah. And I'm guessing if we pay more attention to our gender creativity, that at times where as women we want to either fly off the handle or we're getting a little emotional, we can reflect and be like, okay, I'm at that moment right now. I know what's going on. Let's just stay with this, or we'll be able to write it better, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think all self-awareness is of value, of great value, especially in relation to creativity.
Yeah. Well, it's been so awesome having you out and sharing your wisdom on this very important topic. How can folks get a hold of you, find out more about your work, and get your book?
Thanks. Well, I work at decodingcreativity.com. That's decoding, DECODING, creativity, which is obvious, .com. Gender is just part of what I'm interested in. I'm mostly a creativity practitioner. I help lots of writers and content creators get clarity in their creativity, understand their creativity, how they create, how they feel to create, how they fit the process and fight the process, but also just clarity in any given project, like what's going on here, why am I losing the vision, or how can I get the vision back, or how can I get consensus on the vision. So all those, just I really center on creative clarity. So that's where I am, decodingcreativity.com. Oh, and the book is at amazon.com under the name Sex, Lies, and Creativity. It's an ebook, so it's, an inexpensive and wonderful read. It is. I'm really grateful to have it out in the world.
Yes, I can vouch for that. I read it cover to cover.
Thank you.
Awesome book. And so they can get it on your website as well, or not just Amazon?
There's a link through to Amazon on my website. Its primary marketplace is Amazon.
Awesome. Well, before we head on out here, are there any last words of advice you'd like to leave our audience with regards to creativity and anything we've talked about today?
There is not a person on earth who is not creative in some way. And so the idea that I'm not creative is just an insult to your creativity. There are some of us who know we're creative, but we think we're not that creative. We're not as creative as Tina Fey or, J.K. Simmons or Madonna. And we may not be, but that doesn't mean that what we have, A, can't be improved with some introspection and environment and awareness, and B, is not really of great value in the world.
Absolutely. A perfect way to end our time together. Thank you so much, Julia. And everyone, please go check out decodingcreativity.com and check out her wonderful new book, Sex, Lies, and Creativity. Thank you so much, Julia, for coming to Savvy Central Radio.
Thank you. This was great fun.
Savvy Central Radio is proud to present a live interactive series featuring a new mix to business networking and interviews. Our second event will take place on May 23rd at Tornasol Wellness in Manhattan with our guest, Rochelle Khanna, licensed clinical social worker. She'll share with us her new book, 30 Days of Prayer, Healing Autoimmunity for Women. This event is for health professionals, fitness experts, alternative care professionals, and anyone looking to create optimum wellness in their life. To find out more, book your free ticket today at bit.ly.com/savvyevent, 2. That is bit.ly.com/savvyevent, 2.